And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenters, Aaron Blackwelder and Jason Cowley. With over 25 years in public education, Aaron Blackwelder has taught middle and high school English and has served as digital learning coach. He co-founded Teachers Going Gradeless, hosts the podcast Beyond the Curriculum, is the senior education consultant at Autism Empowerment, and contributes to Spectrum Life magazine. He has also led professional development on the transformative power of AI in the classroom. In his teaching, he empowers students to leverage digital tools through student-centered, project-based learning. Jason Cowley is a national board certified ELA teacher and a former instructional coach with more than 18 years of experience in the classroom. In addition to his work on AI in the classroom, Jason has extensively studied how assessment practices impact student learning. Jason has collaborated with educators on how to integrate generative AI in the classrooms and how students can use generative AI to support their own work. And now I will turn it over to Aaron and Jason.
Good evening or afternoon, depending on what part of the country you're in. Thrilled to be here. As we talk about AI proofing assignments, one of the things that I really want you to think about is your own lesson design and your goals for the lessons in the first place. And this is going to become very important as we move through today's presentation. So take a minute in the chat and just answer, what skill do you want students to leave your class with? We want to be intentional at the outset to get the outcomes that we want our students to have. I see some wonderful responses as they're flashing by with all 350 of you.
Some of us want to gain, have our students have critical thinking skills, be engaged citizens in the world. So many different good responses here.
Yeah. Yeah, and keep them coming as I move through the slides. So for today, we're going to kind of divide this presentation into 4 parts. We're going to start with the cheating problem, right, which is a big concern. Then we'll move on to tasks that AI can do and cannot do, and know that those yardsticks are moving every day. Then we're going to talk more about lesson design. So we'll review Webb's depth of knowledge, and then we'll move into really AI-proof assignments and what that looks and feels like.
Right. So let's jump into the cheating problem. Why do students cheat? We know that cheating is not a new issue in education. I've been teaching a long time, and I've seen cheating for a long time, and I'm sure it's been around longer than I've been teaching. And AI has not created cheating; it's just changed the trajectory of cheating. What does cheating look like, and how is cheating happening in our classes? And understanding why students cheat is really important. There's the desire to get good grades. Grades are transactional. They're like money. They help our students get cheaper car insurance. They buy things like respect from their peers. They buy their parents keeping them off their backs or getting praise from people. And sometimes even our students get money for their grades. So students want to get good grades. For a variety of reasons. There's the fear of failing. Nobody wants to be labeled a failure. A lot of students won't even try to avoid failing. And those who are afraid of getting bad grades will cheat when they feel like they can't even try. There's the procrastination or poor time management. And a lot of us here are dealing with working with teenage students, anywhere between middle school to high school. I'm assuming that's where a lot of our students are. We may even have some college professors here. But the brain is not fully developed, and the ability to plan out and organize ourselves in order to plan a long project is not fully developed in a lot of these skills. We call it executive functioning. And that executive functioning usually isn't fully developed until about 25, 26, 27, 28, somewhere around there. And so to expect a 13, 14, 15-year-old student to be able to plan out well enough, it can be a struggle for a lot of our kids, but that poor time management, video games get in the way, friends getting in the way, extracurricular activities, they get in the way. The belief that they won't get caught. Um, you know, my friend didn't get caught. I didn't get caught last time, so I might not get caught again. And then ultimately, disinterest in the assignment. A lot of what we do in education seems to be a lot of routines and a lot of repurposed and repackaged assignments. And so there's a lot of redundancy in education. So these are some of the main reasons, according to research, why students cheat. There's a fantastic article. Jason, can you put the link in the chat for that? I forgot to send that to you.
Eventually I
Yeah,
can.
eventually. So there's a phenomenal article by this young high school student, Ben Weiss, and he talks all about how students cheat in school and how AI has made it a lot easier. And one of the quotes that I pulled from it that I thought was really salient for what we're going to be talking about today is this one. I regularly hear my classmates laugh about how they use ChatGTP for the prior night's homework. Their gloats are often accompanied by comments along the lines of work smarter, not harder, and teachers literally make it so easy to use AI. I want us to sit with that last part. The teachers literally make it so easy to use AI. This is going to be pivotal throughout this whole presentation, that we are making it easy for students to use AI to outsource their assignments.
Okay, and I'll get to that link eventually. But I want to talk about AI detection tools first. So one of the challenges, I think probably why some of you are here this evening, is because it can be very scary to look at things that you've done for a number of years and realize, wait a minute, AI is able to complete these assignments, and how can I tell? And so in comes, companies, organizations like Turnitin.com has been active in the plagiarism community for a long time. We've used Turnitin.com for a while. GPT-0 came as a direct response to ChatGPT writing essays. And so these AI tools, detection tools, promise that, hey, they can help you combat AI use in your classroom. And it's a really attractive offer when you're feeling overwhelmed and outmatched by your students. According to Turnitin, it is 98% effective at detecting AI. Note that it says that Turnitin says, hey, there's a margin of error of 15 points, so that 98% could be 83%. The challenge with AI detection tools is not that they'll miss an essay every once in a while and a kid will still get away with it. But the challenge becomes that they also produce false positives. And what that means is that a student who is writing and thinking and doing their best on an assignment might get accused of using AI by one of these AI detection tools. And if you were to kind of design the best way to ruin a student-teacher relationship, it might look something like, hey, you use ChatGPT to write this essay, you get a 0 on this assignment, when in fact the student did all the work. And so while these AI detection tools are really attractive, I think there's a real risk that you run in using them or relying on them too much, because eventually you're going to start accusing students of using AI who did not use AI. And those are going to really harm relationships that you have with your students.
Okay, so we're going to do an interactive activity. Go to menti.com. Jason's going to post a link directly to our Mentimeter. We're going to have you guys participate in an interactive activity where you're going to respond with one of the following. Can AI do the assignment? AI cannot do the assignment. Or AI can, but. And but can be a lot of things. So we're going to get into that.
And the Mentimeter link should be in the chat now.
There's a direct link, but you can go to menti.com. If you didn't get the link, you could just put in the code 35630481. Okay, we'll give you guys a moment to get in. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to put a series of typical assignments that teachers give. These, you might give some of these assignments yourself, or you might have a teaching partner who gives some of these assignments. But we're going to have you guess whether AI can do it, not do it, or do it but. Okay. It's like we got about 60 people in here. We'll give you guys another 30 seconds to get in. If you don't get in by the time that I get this started, you're welcome to join at any time. The link will stay there, and the invite will be up at the top the full time. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Let's go with our first one. Match the terms and definitions for key terms from the latest reading. Can AI do it? Oh, wow. Yep. Overwhelmingly. Yep. We've got 160, 170. Yeah, a lot of people saying, yes, AI could do this. And this is absolutely true. AI has no problem doing that. You could give the list of definitions, give the key terms, and AI can match that for students like that. Okay, let's moving to the next one. Solve a series of math problems using the Pythagorean theorem. Can AI do it? Well, if you tell it that to use the Pythagorean theorem and you give it all of its inputs, shouldn't have a problem. Now, AI in the past, ChatGPT has had problems in the past doing math, but it's getting a lot better, and now it can do the Pythagorean theorem fairly easily. Let's move to the next one. Compare and contrast two historical figures or events. Can AI do that? Yeah. AI can do it. It has no problem doing it all. So if you have your students compare this president to that president, it can do it. It might, depending upon who the presidents are, it might tell you that it doesn't get political, but it can do that, or it can compare this point in history to that point in history. It might not do an amazing job at it. There might be some nuances and ideas that might be left out that the user might need to put in, but it can pretty much compare and contrast two historical figures or events. Calculate the area and volume of a geometric shape, such as a cylinder or a triangle or whatever. Again, in the past, AI has struggled with some math, but right now, it should be able to do it without any problems. All right, summarize the main points of a scientific article. There is a fantastic tool called Diffit.ai, and it will rewrite an article, a scientific article at different age levels or reading levels and at different in different languages, and it'll provide a summary with some questions, some comprehension questions. Yes, AI can absolutely do this. Okay, conduct an experiment to test a hypothesis about plant growth. Okay, here's where we're going to get a little bit of messiness here. Now, AI cannot sit there and watch a plant and measure it. It needs a human to do that. So it can't do that. It cannot actually do the conduction of the experiment. Now, what it can do is it can help write the summary of it. It can help make some help write the hypothesis around it, but it can't actually do the experiment itself. It needs a human being to do that. Create persuasive arguments for or against current issues. Okay, this is where AI is going to struggle. Most of our Gen AI tools like ChatGTP and Gemini and Claude are at least 6 months to a year behind on current events. They are not current. So if you wanted to ask your students, which team do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? Build your argument around that. Granted, it can help them write the persuasive argument, but it doesn't even know who's going into the Super Bowl. It would know that. So this is one of those that it can, but so it can help with the construction of it, but it can't actually put together the data and write it. It wouldn't know on current events. Solve a multi-step story problem requiring analysis and application. Okay, AI is we're seeing a lot of can and can but. AI can help with the individual steps here. And it might be able to do it, but it's going to really struggle with some of those multi-steps, complex problems, especially when we need some analysis and application. There's going to need to be that human element in there. So it's going to struggle with that. Moving on, we got a couple more. Write a personal response to a work of art, music, or film.
And I'll just jump in and say, right, this is because I'm watching the chat as Aaron's doing this. This is very much a sliding scale. And what AI couldn't do 3 months ago, now AI can do. We've been working on this book for about 18 months. And so AI has changed a lot in those 18 months, and we've got to watch it change. So be aware of that. And I see some comments in the chat that are saying, no, wait, it can do this, or this one can.
So AI, well, here's the thing. AI can't get into the heart and the mind of the person and cannot tell you how you reacted to music. How did it make you feel? Cannot say what you saw in it or what stood out to you. That's all personal. So AI can help write it, but there needs to be a lot of human input into it to get to that personal response. So this is going to be one of those things that AI can help with the output, but it wouldn't be able to get into your heart and mind to be able to give that response. Conduct research on a topic and present the findings in person. Okay, so conducting research. Now, no, I mean, it can go on. I mean, you can have it do an internet search and provide like internet sources. But if you're conducting real research, like putting out surveys or polling student body or whatever, it can't do that. Now, it can help you to write the questions that you're going to put into that. It can, if you're going to do some observational research, it can't do that either. Now it can help you to construct the presentation that you're going to give, but ultimately the human's got to do a lot of front end work, and then the human's got to present it at the end. So this is going to be one of those things that we say AI cannot do. Design a solution to a specific real world problem within your community. Okay, so this is going to be one of those things that's can it not? Well, first of all, AI doesn't know your community. You'd have to put a lot of data into AI in order for it to understand the context of your community. It would also have to understand the needs of your community. So you would have to do what we call build some machine learning in there for your. Then coming up with the solution, it can provide options, but it's ultimately going to take the human to make the decision on what is the best option to do here. So this is going to be one of those things that the human's going to be doing a lot of work on the front end, so a lot of work on the back end, but it can help them in the construct of that. Engage in an in-person debate where participants take a firm stance on a position. All right. Now, I've built a debate bot, chat bot, and it's pretty good, but it's not an in-person debate. You need two people sitting across, or more people. I do a team debate, which is a lot of fun in my class. But you need real people to do it. Now, they can use AI to help them to do some of the research. They can have AI help them construct their arguments, plan out and prepare for the debate. But really, the participants need to be there in order to do the debate. So, no, cannot. We're going to jump, we're going to come back to this. So don't close out the Mentimeter because we're going to come back to this later on. So let's get back to our presentation here. So we want to consider the rigor of our assignments. AI, there are things that AI can do like match terms, solve math problems, compare and contrast, calculate areas of volume, summarize main points. It cannot write personal responses. It cannot conduct independent research. It cannot design real-world solutions, and it cannot engage in in-person debates. It can but create persuasive arguments and solve multi-step problems. These are things, so we want to think about how do we get our students to those levels?
And this is where we bring in Webb's depth of knowledge again. Many of you are probably familiar with this, or if you were like me, we got Bloom's taxonomy when I was going to school to become an educator. But this is where I'll go. Aaron will talk about kind of the why it's important in a minute, and I'll just review depth of knowledge with you real quick. Right, DOK1 is recall and reproduce. Simple questions and answers. Right, students could Google these. I'm going to use kind of a hammer as an analogy throughout this. Right, identify a hammer. That would be depth of knowledge 1. Depth of knowledge 2 is where we're applying knowledge and skills. We have basic reasoning. AI is really good at this. You can do this in Google too. How did this take place? Why did it take place? How does it operate? Questions like that, right? This might be using a hammer to drive a nail into a fence post. When we get to DOK3, we start to think strategically. And at the beginning of this presentation, a lot of you said, oh, what I want my students to have are critical thinking skills, right? This is strategic thinking is kind of the beginning of critical thinking. So where before we're using a hammer to drive a nail into a post, maybe now if we're thinking strategically, we are trying to figure out a way to use the hammer to remove the nail without damaging the wood, or deciding whether a hammer is the appropriate tool to use for a specific task. And we end up in DOK4, which is this extensive thinking. This is personal thinking, personal beliefs, for example. And in the chat, as we were going through the first Mentimeter activity, I know a lot of people were kind of suggesting, hey, AI can simulate your personal responses. Maybe if you give it enough input, if it knows you really well, right? But again, that's what it's doing. It's simulating those personal responses. It's not actually giving personal responses. So this is where we get into the extensive thinking. If we go back to the hammer, instead of maybe thinking about a use for the hammer, it might be designing a new type of hammer that's well suited to a particular task or problem. So depth of knowledge, we're going to come back to it. as we talk about designing AI-proof assignments.
Okay, so we're going to return back to the Mentimeter, and we're going to look at some of those similar assignments that we saw before. Not all of them, but we're going to determine whether they are, where are they within the DOK. So let's do that. Oops. So match the terms and definition for key terms from the latest reading. What is a hammer? DOK 1. That is a pretty easy one for us to do. Okay. All right, moving on. Next one. Solve a series of math problems using the Pythagorean theorem. How do I use a hammer? DOK 2. So what are the ways that I use a hammer? DOK 2. So solving Pythagorean theorem, DOK 2. Okay. Let's move on. Compare and contrast two historical figures or events. Okay. Well, if we're thinking about hammers, we have, do I use a mallet? Do I use I don't know, whatever, a sledgehammer in this task? So comparing and contrasting is going to be some of those. It's going to use some DOK1 because you need to know facts, but there's also going to be a lot of DOK2 in this because we have to understand the differences between the two. There's a lot of application involved. Summarizing the main points of a scientific article. Okay, this would be DOK2. Thinking about the hammer analogy. What are the basic parts of a hammer? That would be DOK2. Create persuasive arguments for or against the current issue. Okay. Thinking about our hammer again, which is the best tool to use? Which should I use in this circumstance? DOK3, all the way. Solve a multi-step problem requiring analysis and application. Now, this is one that really depends upon the type of story problem that we have. This is going to take some in-depth thinking and require some real analysis and application. So depending upon the type of question, it could either be DOK3 or DOK4. It depends upon the level of questions that we're asking here. Design a solution to a real-world problem within your community. Again, thinking about our hammer, this is DOK4. Design a new hammer. Okay. All right, and our last one, engage in an in-person debate where participants take a firm stance on a position. Okay, now thinking about our hammer. Now, first of all, the setup for it, the planning going into this is going to be DOK3. Why do I believe this is the best hammer? But then when we are asked questions, when those questions go back and forth, it's going to take some creativity and some more depth of knowledge. Why did I use this? And how do I justify this? What do I believe about this? So we're going to get into the DOK4 when we get to the question and answers. So those opening statements are going to be purely DOK3, but the question and answering, that engagement, is going to be that DOK4. Okay. So we're going to jump back into our slides here.
And you're done with Mentimeter, so you don't need to keep that tab or window open.
So tasks that AI cannot do right now, and it's going to be a long time before we're going to actually do this, is it can't explain the decisions that I make. Why did I choose this over that? That comes from a set of personal beliefs and an understanding of the world. It can't make moral judgments. Again, those personal beliefs and and the way we perceive the world and our experiences. In-person activities, AI cannot do that at this point in time. We need those human beings to do that. Making personal connections. It can simulate, but really those personal connections come from that human element of engaging in the world. Feeling empathy, caring for others. AI can't do that. It can give us examples of ways to do that, but it can't feel the empathy. So these are things that AI cannot do. And I don't think that in my lifetime AI is going to be able to do these things because this is what makes us human. Okay.
And just to jump back for a second, we're talking about, right, personal connections, in-person activities, right? It's only been a couple of years since we were doing all of our teaching online, at least in large parts of the country. And I think if we think back to that experience with our students versus being back in our classrooms, working with them face to face, we can see a lot of the value of those personal connections. So now we're going to bring it back to lesson design, right? And at the beginning, you listed skills that you wanted your students to know. And so we have to think about really deliberately, what is the purpose of our assignments? And that's where, again, depth of knowledge kind of comes in. Students will still have to know basic facts to complete assignments. But we can ask them to move beyond just the basic facts and really come up with some wonderful and deep and meaningful learning that is harder to really use AI to do. So part of that involves thinking about your teaching like a PE teacher or an art teacher or a music teacher. Because what these folks are really thinking about in their day-to-day teaching is what's going on in the classroom right now, right? The point is the action and not the knowledge or the product at the end, right? If you're a musician, likely your music teacher is listening to you play music and then giving you feedback in the moment. When we're thinking about learning for a student in an English classroom doesn't happen when the student turns the essay in. The learning happens during their process of research and writing and thinking about all of those things. And so thinking about the processes that are going on in your classroom as they are occurring, that's what's meaningful. It's not the product at the end. And so that's an assessment piece, but I think that's at the core of an AI-proof assignment. It's easy to turn something in that AI wrote. And I know many of us have, complex prompts the students have to read and, oh, look, you used AI to do this. But really the purpose is the process. It's really about the journey and not just the end result. So moving on, I'll give you a couple of examples of maybe what a traditional assignment would look like versus what an AI-proof assignment would look like. And I want to also say that an AI-proof assignment may use AI as part of the process. I think more and more teaching our students how to use these tools effectively and ethically is going to be really important. So a traditional essay in an English classroom might look something like student would select a topic, they would perform some research, and if you've assigned many of these essays, the quality of that research is going to be variable depending on the student. Then they would do an outline. Then they would write an essay, and then they would submit that essay for assessment. And that's the regular process that you would use in lots of classrooms. So an AI-proof assignment is still going to do those things. We're not taking away steps, we're adding steps and hopefully deepening student thinking. As part of this, a student would select a topic, but they would have to explain why they chose that topic in particular. So not just selecting a topic, but this is why I chose this topic. This is what this topic means to me. Students, when they are allowed to choose a topic, right, will often do better work than if it's a teacher-assigned topic. Obviously, this doesn't work in every context and every situation, but deep background knowledge will improve their performance, and choosing a topic allows them to tap into their own strengths. Then they'll still perform research just like they would before, but after they perform research, we're going to ask them to justify why they chose the information that they chose to use in their assignment. So it's not enough to say, oh, because this is what the website said. Well, why this information? Why not this information over here?
I have my students get more research than they need, and then they have to justify what they're putting into their project and what they're excluding.
Yeah. And so they're still going to outline an essay. They're still going to write an essay, right? And if you want AI to assist with either of those processes, depending on what the goals for your assignment are, you can certainly do that. After they're finished producing this essay, then they're going to have a conversation with someone else, maybe with another classmate, about their essay and the product and the thinking that they had. And maybe they will come up with some questions for them to answer during the conversation. Or maybe another student will come up with questions that they can answer. And they can even record this conversation and turn it in as part of this process. So what we're really trying to do in an AI-proof assignment is, where can I find evidence of student thinking? Where can I make this assessment a conversation between myself and the student, rather than, look, I worked on this essay and here I'm turning the essay in, right? And it's that back and forth. It's the assessing during the process that becomes really valuable and that helps you see evidence of student thinking. Writing is about thinking. And so when I'm assessing my own students' work, that's what I'm looking for, is I'm looking for evidence of their thinking. And if I'm talking to them, if I'm asking them to explain their decision-making process, then I'm going to see more evidence of that thinking than if I say, here's your essay, it's due in 2 weeks, good luck. Okay, move on to our math example. All right, in a traditional math classroom, you're going to introduce a concept. You'll have students take note. The instructor probably scaffolds, right? They do it, maybe work with a partner on this one, and then you do some practice problems on your own. Eventually, there's a test. All of those elements are still going to exist in an AI-proof math assignment, right? In an AI-proof classroom. So you're going to have those elements, but additionally, you might ask students to use that math to justify some decision making in some scenarios, so that we see how this math is being used in the real world and not just on story problems or numbers and letters on a page. So for an example, in a math classroom, if we're talking about linear equations, right? You're a social media influencer. I've got a fourth grader. What does he want to do when he grows up? He wants to be a YouTuber, because of course he does, right? So you're a social media influencer who's starting to make money. When do you quit your day job to develop content full time, right? Is there an equation in terms of cost, in terms of expected revenue, that would help inform your decision-making process? And so now, yes, we're taking this math, but we're having to explain, this is how I use the math effectively. This is what it means. Another example, you're a city council person, right? When are we building seawalls to deal with rising sea levels, right? How are we allocating existing resources to do that? Are we trying to raise taxes? We're worried about mitigating the damages. And again, we can use math to justify our thinking and explain our thinking, because that's ultimately what we're really after, is this evidence of student thinking.
I love the idea of questioning the, do you reallocate existing funds or raise taxes? Because that's a decision our politicians are making all the time. And if you decide to reallocate existing funds, who are you cutting them from, and how is it going to impact those organizations, is an important question. I think that engaging students in those types of thinking questions around mathematics are much more crucial than, can you solve these 25 linear equations on a test. So,
Yeah, great example in the chat about LA right now.
so all right, time for reflection. We've talked about the AI proof assignment and what it takes to really level up the thinking. It's not trying to find ways to catch our kids or stop them from using AI. The challenge here is how do we help our kids to use AI in effective ways, to become AI literate students who can use the AI effectively to help them express their thinking in challenging and unique ways. So what I'd like you guys to do is in the chat, we're going to conclude with this. What can you change about a future lesson to help students develop the skills you want them to leave your class with? So, what is something you could change in one of those? And before you put your answer in, make sure you put your content area and the grade level. So, if you teach English 9 and you got a project on Romeo and Juliet coming up, or if you teach geometry and you have this project coming, what is it that you think you could change about that that's going to make it more relevant and level it up to be an AI proof assignment? Jason, I can't see the chat. Are we seeing some cool stuff?
Oh yeah, for sure.
You want to shout out a few?
I would if they weren't moving. So if the chat wasn't moving so quickly, lots of
Well,
sharing.
this is
Lots of people
great
are saying,
PLC, guys. So make sure you scroll back through the chat, find some cool ideas on ways that you can level up some of your own lessons, beg, borrow, and steal. That's what good teachers do is we beg, borrow, and steal from others and then apply them in creative ways in our classroom. So do
yeah,
that, guys.
a lot of you are saying, oh, well, you have to assess some of these things verbally. I love the idea of talking to your students and carving out time to do that when possible to really have them tell you about their learning because I think you get a really different picture that
Mm,
way, and it's a great way to get a lot of questions answered that the students might not ask you otherwise.
yeah. Okay. All right. So right now we've got about 5 minutes left. What I'd like to do is, if you guys have any questions for us, we'd love to respond to any of them. Um, Margaret will jump in any moment now, and she'll read some of the questions to us, and we'll try to respond as best as we can to you.
Um, so I was waiting for the chat to kind of
It's going.
pause as well. But do you have any suggestions for um okay, hang on one second. It's still lots of questions are coming in, so it's hard to kind of
Yeah.
monitor the chat with it. Does an AI detection tool exist teachers could use to prevent?
Okay, well, I'll jump in. I
Yeah.
talked about that a little bit earlier, right? The idea of false positives. So let me tell you, when I have a product that is in front of me that I think, you know what, kid, I'm just not sure that you wrote this, right? I will occasionally go to like GPT-0, turnitin.com. I think those are the two biggest names that if I had to recommend one, I would say that. I'm never personally using the AI detection tool as the final say or running all of my papers through this. But if something feels off to me, what I will do sometimes is run it through just to see what GPT-0 says, and then I have a one-on-one conversation with the student, and I ask them to tell me about their work, and I ask them to um, tell me about the process that they use to come up with this work. I guess the one thing I would say is, my school uses Google Suite for everything. So I'm on the version history on Google Docs if there's a typed assignment. And I look at that fairly carefully. And I ask my students to do their writing on that Google Doc so that at least I can see version history, right? That's not foolproof by any stretch of the imagination, but version history will look at how long it took a student to do what writing is a really good first stop in some of the basic detection things, and then have a conversation with the student about
Then
it.
I'll jump in on that too. We were doing a debate unit in my class, and one of my students turned in his opening statement. It was clearly written all by AI because it really didn't address what we were doing in class. And so when I talked to the student, I asked him, I just said, "Hey, I'm just curious, did you have AI write this whole thing for you, or is this from you?" And he said that he admitted, he goes, "Yeah, I had AI write it." I said, this doesn't address what we're talking about in class. And during our debates, you're going to be out. It was a debate series where winners advance, losers were cut, winners got a pizza party at the end. This kid was a very highly motivated student, wanted to win, but when we went through the first round, I wasn't the judge. I had a panel of judges come in. All the judges unanimously scored him down. They could tell that it didn't meet the requirements and wasn't answering the questions we're trying to ask, and he lost the debate. So, it wasn't a matter of getting a grade. The kid was legitimately bummed after that he lost his debate, and I pulled him aside. I said, "You didn't make the revisions that you needed to make after I gave you that feedback." So I think having those conversations with kids and dealing with those kind of issues is an important piece. But I think that you can tell if they don't answer the questions that you're trying to ask, they're trying to answer, or if it just seems way above their level. Like, hey, there's these words that are in here. Do you know what these words are? And have them try to explain them to you. It's pretty clear. I'm going to have, and I had students do that. And I told them, hey, look, you're responsible for the content in here. If AI is helping you to write this, then you need to make sure that you understand it. So you got to go back through and understand all these words and phrases because you're going to be questioned about those things later on. And a lot of my students did. They went back and learned some of those terms and phrases that AI was giving them.
Other questions? Margaret, have you got?
Yes, I was able to get a few. um, so here's one. Actually, someone had said, um, are you upfront with your students about your in-depth knowledge about AI? I would guess that would stifle a significant amount of shenanigans right off the bat. But a lot came up about since they are going to use it anyway, how do we teach them to use it ethically?
That's a fantastic question. Um, I'm going to take that one, Jason, if it's
Go for
okay.
it.
So I've been teaching middle school students how to use it. And before we even got into using it, I told them that the most important thing in this class was their thinking, as Jason was pointing out earlier. I care about their thinking more than anything. You are a unique human being. What you think, feel, and believe about this world is the most important thing in this class. And because of that, I want whatever comes out to represent your thinking. And I have proficient writers in my class, and I have kids that are at the developing level. And I would tell them, as you are welcome to use AI, so long as AI is reflecting your thinking. And I've got a young lady in my class who reads and writes at about a first grade reading level. And she is shining in my class because she's using AI to communicate her ideas. She's blowing the class out of the water. But I also mentioned that I had that student who was a high-end kid who lost his debate. That young lady, didn't quite get to the championship level, but she got up there quite a bit because she used AI to connect her thinking together. But then I had that high-end student who just shortcutted the process and he lost out. Um, I think having that conversation with your class about what is the most important thing in this class. It is your thinking, your understanding, your beliefs about this world. And this class is about shaping those and giving you a forum to communicate your beliefs about this world and your thinking. Then AI should be able to help them in the process of that. And AI can't do it for them.
Thank you. Here's another one. How would you approach a teacher who is using a deficit mindset when it comes to AI? Example, only looks to catch and accuse students.
Okay, it's a great question. Um, Jason, you want to handle it, or do you want me to jump in? Because I've already got
Um,
it.
yeah, well, if you have an answer, then go for it. I'm chewing on this one a little bit.
So, as a digital learning coach, when ChatGTP first hit in November 2022, there was huge, oh no, we got to get this blocked. Um, I was intrigued by ChatGTP. I'm like, what can this do? And I just played around with it and I learned a lot about it. And I just discovered the potential around it. And my first inkling was, okay, what can I do to get this into students' hands? This is a great tool. Um, we had a lot of teachers push back on it. And so as a team, our digital learning coach team, we went out and trained teachers how to use it within their own profession. How do they get to use it and help streamline some of the tasks that they do to make life a lot easier? And how do they use it to be more effective with their students? And as it unlocked with those teachers for their use, they saw the potential for them. I had many teachers go, oh, wow. And they were a lot more open to how do we get this into the hands of students than just let's put this in the hands of students. No, I think teachers first need to see the how effective AI can be for themselves. And once we realize the effectiveness for ourselves, then we can see how it would be important for our student to learn to use. And one of the things about this is with any new technology, we're going to have a loss. There's going to be something lost. And when typing came around, cursive just wasn't a necessary tool. And some people are welcome to argue with me on that, but the majority is saying right now cursive is not a necessary tool. There are going to be other tools that are not going to be necessary as AI continues to advance, but it's going to create new things, new literacies that our students are going to need to learn in order to be productive people in this world. So, yes, if a teacher is not willing to open up to AI, start off by sharing with them how it can help them. And then I'll let them sit with that and let them resonate with that. And then just start bragging about how your kids are engaging with AI and doing amazing things with it.
Okay, and one last question before we need to wrap up, but I know you both mentioned that in the 18 months that you took to write this book, how much AI changed. So someone put out there, wondering where you see education in 5 to 10 years with AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. When Aaron and I started kicking around the idea for this book, I said, hey, if you had asked me last year, this would have been in early 2023, how long is it going to be before AI can write essays? I would have said 5 to 10 years. And, here we are now, and it's clearly able to do that on many levels. Um, I think really what it's going to do to education is it's going to refocus us, and it's going to refocus us into that student to teacher connection, the personal conversations that you have with students, rather than just focusing on the product. Um, I think COVID and remote learning taught us that while it works great for some students and it can be very, very effective, there's still a lot of value in face to face relational communication, and even students working effectively in teams and groups. And so I don't think AI can really replace what happens in the classroom on a day-to-day basis for most students. I think it'll be great as an aid. I think it'll be great to tutor students and help them express and explore their own ideas. But I don't think it's going to replace what's at the heart of a lot of classrooms, and that's the conversations and the relationships that you develop with your students.
The thinking, the thinking is going to continue to be important.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret, and everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules to hang out with us for an hour.